What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here within the GSD Mode podcast, real estate knowledge round, where I answer your questions and do a deep dive into your questions here on the podcast. Now, today's question comes from Deborah Rodriguez, and she asked if I'd be willing to provide more information on best paid lead sources for real estate agents. So today we're going to break this down. What are the best paid when it comes to marketing? What are the best paid avenues? What are the best paid sources? How to go out there and figure that out and decipher that for you and your business, how to get the best return and so forth. And there's a lot that goes into this. So we're going to do a deep dive and break this down. Now, two quick things. If you have a question and or a topic that you would like me to discuss on this GSD Mode Real Estate Knowledge Round podcast, you can submit those in two different ways. You can shoot me an email to joshua@gsdmode.com. Again, that's joshua@gsdmode.com. Or if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, just drop me a comment with, again, whatever that question is or that topic is that you would like me to discuss here in a deeper manner here on the podcast. All right, so then from there, if you haven't already, make sure to check out gsdmode.com, a bunch of additional free trainings, resources. You got on there my free ebook, which is 42 top tips and strategies to help you continue to grow and scale your real estate business. Nothing being sold, 100% free. Got my free online 3-hour in-depth masterclass on 6 steps to 3x or more your real estate business within the next 12 months, regardless of the market conditions. Free disc assessments, more information on there and so forth. So again, another just free resource to help you go out there and grow your business. So check out gsdmode.com. All right, so let's jump into the topic at hand. So again, we are here to talk about marketing, best paid marketing lead sources to go out there and grow your business. And just in case, you don't know the difference between marketing and prospecting, if you're newer to the business, and I know that this can create some confusion, or at least the ways that I define these is, look, the way I look at this is prospecting is me trading time, like I'm investing time to go out there and generate these leads. So, whether it be open houses, networking events, whether that be cold calling, circle prospecting, whatever those methods may be, you name it, right? That's me not having to necessarily pay money, but I'm trading time to go out there and generate doing activities to generate those leads. Marketing is where I'm stroking a check, right? Like I'm going to go out there and buy these leads, pay for these leads, and so forth. So today we are here to talk about specifically what are the best paid sources to go out there and grow your business. So I just want to make sure that we were clear on that, just in case you were like, oh, well, no, growing your YouTube channel is the best, or whatever that may be. Again, we're just talking specifically about paid strategies. Now, there's a lot that goes into this because I'm not a big believer in that there is a best, or one is better than the other. Look, everything works, nothing doesn't. You can go out there and create success with so many different avenues, so many different ways in this business. So it's about understanding how to go out there and decipher and break down what is best for you. Because based on how you want to grow your business, based on your situation, based on your time frame, different sources can be better for you based on those things. So we're going to break this down. So by the end of this podcast, you can then have a better idea of how to decipher what the best methods or method is for you with how you want to go out there and grow your real estate business. So if we just simplify this, right, and we're going to make this as simplistic as possible, let's break down paid marketing into 2 different buckets, right? So bucket number 1 is reactive direct sources. Bucket number 2 is proactive disruptive sources. So everything's going to kind of fall within these different buckets. So reactive direct sources, those are going to be, third-party generated leads, meaning your Zillows, your Realtor.coms, your OpCities. These are these big juggernauts that we're all familiar with, that have these, massive websites or whatever that is, where they get people to come to their specific website. So like a Zillow, where they're there for an intentional reason. This is why I call them, direct sources, because everybody that goes on there, and we'll use Zillow as an example, even though essentially Realtor.com, Trulia, Zillow, it's all the same shit. But looking at Zillow there, it's like, okay, if anybody that visits Zillow is there for a direct reason to do a specific task, they're there to gain specific information. If you get a lead from that source, right, it's an inquiry about something very specific, versus proactive disruptive sources, right? So disruptive meaning they didn't go there for that thing. We disrupted them, whether you want to call it, con them into, them, reaching out, calling us, whatever that may be. Example of this is social media. If I'm doing a paid Facebook ad, like nobody went onto social media with the intention of, oh, I'm going to go, go look at real estate, look at like, they didn't go on there hoping to find a real estate ad. They went on there to check on their family, their friends, be entertained, whatever it may be. They went there for a different reason. I just happened to disrupt whatever they were doing on there. So proactive, disruptive sources. We're talking Google pay-per-click. We're talking YouTube pay-per-click. We're talking, Facebook or paid Instagram, even mailers. So I'm even putting in, direct mail, like whether you're having a geo farm that you're mailing for, like, look, nobody checks their mailbox. Like, oh, I'm so excited to get this mail piece. They're going to get bills or whatever. We just happen to show up, catch them right time, right place. It's still under that proactive, disruptive source. So you got reactive direct sources, and then you've got proactive disruptive sources. Now I'm going to break down the pros and cons of these, and we'll do a deeper dive into these so you can decipher which path is best or better for you and your business. Now, a quick side note with this, I hear so many agents say things like, oh, well, I get these lead sources from insert, I don't know, their CRM name. Whether it's Boomtown or Perfect Storm or KV Core or, Sync or whatever that is, or a third party company that they are paying to go out there. But how it really breaks down to what are those companies doing to go out there and generate those leads, right? It doesn't matter if they're doing it for you on your behalf or if you were doing it, right? Like any of those, those, like I just mentioned, those names that I just mentioned, they're going to go out there and they're going to, do whether it's Google pay-per-click or Facebook paid ads, Instagram paid ads, and so forth. So those are going to, again, fall under that disruptive, proactive, disruptive sources. And I'll get into what I mean by reactive versus proactive here as we break down and go into, but just that understanding that everything's going to pretty much for the most part fall into these two buckets, right? So one is they're going there with intent. Right. They went there to go out and like go there with intent. Like if I go to Zillow, I'm there for a reason, a very specific reason. If I go to social media, if I go to Google, if I'm watching a YouTube video and all of a sudden this ad pops up, like I didn't go to YouTube to watch that freaking ad. I went there to watch something else. It was just an effective ad that caught my attention and got me somehow to opt in. Right. Even same with when it comes to a mail piece, a direct mail. I went there to get my bills or do whatever. Right. It just slipped in with that. So if we put everything into these two buckets, right? Then from there, let's start deciphering, pros and cons of each of these buckets. So let's first look at reactive direct sources. So again, Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, there's going to be others out there, Opsity, there's a bunch of these. And this can be other things than just, online sources. This could be, paid real estate magazines, if they still do those, right? Or the paid real estate section in the newspaper, right? Like people are going to that, picking up that magazine for an intent. You're running, an ad inside that magazine. They're there with intent, right? So, and I'm not saying to go out there and do paid real estate magazines anymore, something I used to do a lot of, but I don't even know if they exist. I know that I guess they exist, but not like they used to, right? So I'm just trying to, make sure to inform you and make sure that you're aware, like this can expand to other things outside of, Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, Opsity, and so forth. Now, again, though, they are there with intent. And they're inquiring then, though, about a very specific property for a very specific reason with that. So what are the different pros here? All right, so number one, you got higher conversion rates. So look at, if you look at like a Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, average might be low, but average sucks. We don't want to go after average. So if we're looking at, good to great, you can expect, and meaning that you got a good follow-up protocol, you're looking at about a 5 to 10% plus conversion rate, with these types of lead sources. So, typically a higher conversion rate with these sources, especially when we're talking like a Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, which is what most people are going to be doing or thinking of when they're talking about this type of a paid lead source. So but you got to have very effective follow-up protocols. And the reason why I call these reactive direct sources, I think you can understand now why we call them direct sources, because these are people going directly to that service, directly to that website, directly there for a very specific reason, right? And that has to do with real estate. So when they're reaching out and inquiring, again, it's not disruptive, it's directive, right? But the reason why I say reactive is with these types of lead sources, speed to lead becomes paramount. If you want to be able to have a high conversion rate and go out there and crush it and maximize your ROI, and again, we'll just speak to, Zillow and Realtor.com and Trulia here, just as I'm going to use those as the primary examples, and maybe Zillow and Realtor.com, because those are kind of the two juggernauts. But to me, it's all the same. Like, I personally had a lot of experience with Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia. My overall conversion rate's about the same with all of those. Those that I coach, those that I mentor, that I see that are doing a great job with these, their conversion rates is about the same across the board. certain areas I've heard others that say, well, I get a little bit better experience with Zillow versus Realtor.com. Talk to somebody else in another market, maybe it's flipped. They get a little bit better results with Realtor.com versus Zillow. My best guesstimate to that is if we really peel back the onion layers and dissected every element of that, right? It's just because they probably have a better follow-up protocol or get more excited. It's probably something more mental or with an actual process that's better followed on one versus the other. Now, and I'm not saying that one isn't maybe superior in certain areas to the other as well, but overall, I find that, those to be very, very similar overall conversion rates. And again, that should be about 5% on the low end, 10% plus on the good end. Like, meaning if your follow-up process is fully dialed in, 5% worst case, 10% plus best case, right? But again, if you're to get high conversion rates, and to have success with this lead source, you've got to understand with this type of lead source, you're going to be in a reactive state. And it doesn't mean that you have to be reactive. It just means that you need to have your foundation set up. You got to have, the foundations that can allow that reactivity to take place. And what I mean by that is, okay, if you're not being reactive with those lead sources, somebody needs to be. And what that may be that maybe you have an admin, maybe you have ISAs, maybe you have agents that these leads are flowing to, because dude, you got to, it's that picking up that phone, answering those phones, those that I know that have the highest success with, with these types of sources. And look, I used to invest a lot of money in these sources. For me personally, I focus more on the second type of lead source that we're going to talk about today, but I still have agents within my team that crush it on this. I have many coaching clients that crush it, right? Everything works, nothing doesn't. So I'm not saying one's good versus bad, one's better than the other. It's all dependent on your style, which we'll break down into today and go deeper into, but those that are having big success with these, right? They have an 80 or 90% call answer rate. So when that inquiry is calling in, boom, they're calling, right? Or if a lead inquires via email, right, speed to lead, they're responding in less than 5 minutes. They have either that agent, or they have a team or a department that is able to be reactive and jump on these, because speed to lead is critical. Speed to lead is important, but then from there, that immediate follow-up, in addition to, long-term nurture follow-up is important too, but one of the biggest differentiators between these two lead sources is that being very aggressive and being able to kind of be in a position to drop everything and take these calls and drop everything and go out there and show properties, because if you look at like Zillow, Realtor.com, they've just really replaced the modern day sign call. Right. It's just, if you're driving around, you see a property, you're going to call on that sign, or you're probably just going to pull up your phone, go to Zillow, and they might be at their, comfort of their own home or whatever. But again, it's almost kind of like replacing the modern day sign call. That sign call inquiry used to be, a decade or 2 decades ago. It's kind of just replaced that, if you will. So again, answering those calls, getting those immediate conversations, because these lead sources are further down the funnel. So you got to make sure that you make communication as quick as possible. And then from there, getting, face to face and connecting with them as quickly as possible, becomes paramount to go out there and capture a high conversion rate with these types of lead sources. So that's why I call them reactive direct sources, right? Now, when we're deciphering, okay, is this the best source for me? Well, I don't know. Do you want to be reactive? Do you have the infrastructure within your real estate business to allow for that reactive, portion of this? One of my agents on my team who has their own team, so it's kind of a team within a team, they crush it and they murder it with Zillow, but man, they've got, you've got ISAs, they've got, admin ISAs. They also have other agents that, so when that phone rings, dude, it might broadcast a dozen agents, right? They make sure, I believe that their call answer rate is almost 90%. So, they make sure that they have the infrastructure where these calls are answered, and then bam, if it's an email inquiry, or for whatever reason that phone call isn't answered, they're following up 3 times in that first 24-hour period, 3 times in that first day, then every day, bam, 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 hammering those leads, and then also combined with that longer term nurture, right? So that's why I say reactive. It doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's good. It's just, hey, is that the type of business structure that you want to build? And if you do, great, and you will get a high conversion ratio. I've seen upwards to 13% conversion ratios, with these types of lead sources. So the conversion ratio can be very high. So that's pro number 1. Number 2 is that further down the funnel, which means that you're going to typically have a quicker time frame from lead to client to closing, with this type of source. So you've got higher conversion ratios and you've got a quicker timeline from obtaining that lead to turning them into a client to turning them into a closing, from the source, because they're further down the funnel. That's also why it's so important to be reactive, to be able to capture those right away, because they're on the hunt, man. If you don't, they're going to find another agent within 24 hours or 40 hours or 72 hours. Like, they are on the hunt, right? So got to make sure that you're reactive, get those high conversion rates, and again, you're going to have that quicker time frame from lead to client to close. All right, so cons, as we already talked about, con number one, reactive lead source. So just that understanding that speed to lead matters. You must be able to jump on them immediately and be aggressive out of the gate. Of course, every lead source out there that you can't convert out of the gate needs a good long-term, follow-up nurture protocol, but these are going to require much more of an aggressive, from a frequency standpoint, and being able to service those leads and drop things, to go out there and when that phone rings, dude, you're answering it, right? So you got, puts you in that reactive state. Again, not good, not bad. It's just deciphering, do you have and do you want to have the infrastructure in order to go out there and do that? Okay, con number two, you got a higher cost per lead. So we talked about a higher conversion rate, yes, but a higher cost per lead on these sources, which mean that it can lead to a lower overall ROI, even though the conversion rate is higher, even though you might be converting 1 out of 10 leads, right? But the average cost per lead might be $100 or more, and it seems to be getting more and more and more year over year. Now, for some of you, you might be like, oh, I'm with OpCity or I'm with Zillow. Like Zillow in my market, you can no longer buy Zillow leads, but you're paying a referral fee, whether it be 30% or 35%. It's still, that's still, you're paying money for that lead, just doing it, paying on the back end versus the front end. But when you start breaking down the money on that, typically the overall ROI, is going to be less than you would get with proactive disruptive sources, the source number two that we're going to break down and talk about here. But doesn't mean it's going to be a bad ROI. Like, you can get great ROIs, with this. You can get 4 or 5, up to upwards of 10x ROIs sometimes, depending on your price points and cost per lead for your market and so forth. But you do have a higher cost per lead, so lower overall return on your investment. All right, number three, you got restrictions to scale. So you can have limited availability with these, whether they have exclusivity, whether that's, like, okay, you have so many zip codes, like, okay, Zillow in my market, you can't even get into it. Like, it's just done. There's an impossibility to get in anymore, and some states have that, some states don't, but then from there, even if you're able to, like right now, okay, I can go out there and start buying Realtor.com leads in my market, but only so many zip codes are going to be available. Percentage of those zip codes are going to be available. If I want to go out there and scale it, I got to wait for, other people to drop off, like they only get so many leads and have so many leads, and they can only sell so many leads. So it's a lot of that's out of my control. So it's reliant on, more zip codes opening up or more opportunities opening up. So you got restrictions to scale, and can have limited availability. And then the last con here is a lot of these have contracts, right? Which, may not matter to you or not, but, you just got to be prepared for that. Some have, 12-month contracts, and so forth. So whether you deem that to be a pro or a con, I deem it to be a con, just because I've had some negative situations in the past, where I couldn't scale it, and then they made some changes on the back end, and then I was stuck in this contract, and, so forth. So just, again, things to be aware of. Okay, so now let's break down proactive disruptive sources. So again, here we are talking, these are the ways of, okay, you're able to go out there and be proactive. Now, proactive with your lead generation, with the actual activity, but then proactive, with your targeting, you're able to be proactive also when it comes to your follow-up. But these are disruptive sources, right? So again, we'll break down the pros and cons of these. So again, proactive disruptive sources, bucket number two, these are going to be like your paid Facebook leads, your paid Instagram leads, your paid YouTube pay-per-click, Google pay-per-click, even direct mail and mailers fall under this category. So pros of these, lower cost per lead. For the most part, right? Direct mail could be a little bit of a different beast, versus, when it versus, like a Facebook lead and so forth. But overall, we're just kind of speaking overall here. You got a lower cost per lead, which then typically will equate to a higher ROI. Now, this is all making the assumption that you've got an effective follow-up protocol dialed in and in place, right? Like, if you're ever going to generate leads, lead generation is going to become obsolete without a effective dialed in lead follow-up protocol, right? So it doesn't matter, quote unquote, how good the lead source is, how hot the lead source is. If your follow-up sucks, you're going to have sucky results, right? If follow shit, you're going to have shit results. So just, we're just making that assumption here that you got that dialed in, so lower cost per lead, higher ROI. So that's pro number one. Pro number two, speed to lead isn't as important, but long-term nurture follow-up is imperative with these. So let's just say I get a paid Facebook lead, which Facebook's one of my favorite, paid lead sources that exists out there. One of the best ROIs that I've seen. It's easy for me to go out there and get a 20x ROI, meaning, I stick in $1, I make $20 back, from it. So you can get great ROIs, whether it's 10 or 20x with it. But then from there, again, like I can pick and choose. I don't have to be reactive, but I've got to be consistent with that follow-up game. So a Facebook lead comes in, to my CRM. Okay, they're going to get an autoresponder email. So an immediate autoresponder email, immediate autoresponder text. They're going to automatically get placed on my 1,000-day email text follow-up drip. Then boom, I'm going to start initiating my phone calls, right? So now with these though, because again, they're a longer nurture, they're in the kind of the beginning stages, with these disruptive sources for the most part, they're not as far down in the funnel. So which is positives to that. They typically, don't have those relationships is at as high of a level, with other realtors and so forth. So I have a higher probability of making that relationship, but I got to be positioned to be able to have that longer term follow-up game. Like the average, Facebook lead, and when I say paid Facebook, also for Instagram, and this holds true for, almost all paid lead sources, whether it be YouTube pay-per-click or Google pay-per-click, it's about 6 months. So Facebook specifically is 6.7 months inside my CRM before they become a client. So a lot of these are going to be 6 to 9, sometimes 12 months, before you're going to start seeing a consistent good ROI with this. So, okay, if the person's going to be in my CRM for 6.7 months, it's not so imperative that I talk to them. I don't like the whole speed to lead, got to drop everything and call them within 5 minutes. Like that is irrelevant, right? Because they're not going to be ready to go out there and take action for 6.7 months. So it's like, okay, like my goal is to call them same day. But if I can't call them same day, if I get busy, okay, as long as I call them within 24 hours, introduce myself and have that conversation with them, fine. So it's like, okay, my follow-up protocol though is, within 24 hours, and then every other day for the first 14 days, and every 21 days for the first year. That follow-up protocol exists until we've had a conversation, know what their goals are, their expectations are, we know what their time frame is. Then based on, okay, if they're, 1 year or more out, or 6 to 12 months out, or 6 months or less out, then that dictates what those follow-up frequencies are of those calls. But from there, it doesn't matter. I can call them any time of the day. Obviously within reason, right? I'm not calling them at midnight, but speed to lead doesn't matter. I can be proactive with those things. It can be more systematized, and so forth with that. I don't have to be reactive, but I got to still make sure that I've got that long-term follow-up protocol in place. So we talked about number one, lower cost per lead, so higher ROI. Number two, speed to lead isn't as important, but long-term nurture follow-up is important. Number three, you can scale up or down as much as you want or need. So unlike, okay, well, if I let's say I'm adding more agents or want to double my business, but most of my business comes from Zillow, it doesn't mean that I can go out there and double my Zillow leads. But with these sources, yeah, I can, it's pretty much for the most part fully in my control. At least in my market, I've never got to the point where I've hit max capacity as far as the Zillow leads, that I can go out there and run, right? I can get really targeted with them. I can scale them up or down, as much as I want. So I can scale them up, or if, man, now I'm inundated, I'm slammed, I'm busy, I'm unable to work all the leads that I have. Okay, well, I can dial that down or turn that off temporarily, which I can't with, those other sources, because I might be under contract, might be, whatever. You have those limitations with those other sources typically. So you can scale up down as much as you want and need. Number four, no contract. So that's another pro. Number five, more control with messaging, right? So, and when I mean by messaging, you can focus and dictate with your targeting. So, hey, I have no limitations for zip codes, types of properties. I really get to pick and choose. And even if it's Facebook or Google pay-per-click or direct mail and so forth, I get to pick and choose, the subdivisions, the price points, now Facebook targeting, you can't go so much to subdivisions, but I could pick and choose, again, the type of buyer, the price point of buyer, that messaging, if the market's shifting, whether it be, hey man, maybe in this market climate, I want to go after investors. Another market climate, I want to go after, move up buyers. Another market climate, I want to go after first time buyers. Another market climate, I need to go after short sales. Whatever that market climate is, I can switch and change my targeting, my messaging, and just switch that up, right? So more control with messaging, so types of properties, price points, ability to construct funnels, which can be, highly effective when it comes to this type of paid lead gen as well. So now the cons here, you're gonna have a lower conversion rate. So with these online sources that we're talking about here, 1 to 2, 1% is kind of typical. If you have a decent follow-up protocol, if you're really good, with these, you might get 2.5 to 3% plus. If you understand retargeting funnels and so forth with this. But what I like about it is so much of this is predicated just on your skill set. So you can maximize, learn more, improve your skill set, improve your overall results. Now, of course, mailers are going to get a lower conversion rate, with like direct mail for Geo Farm, like for me, it was always one sale out of 2,500 mailers sent. Now it might take 6 months to build that up to start getting those numbers, with the right frequency and so forth. And then if I'm doing expired mailers or short sale mailers or FSBO mailers, each one of those differentiates slightly. So those will be lower conversion rates, than that 1 to 2.5+%. But overall lower conversion rates. But lower conversion rates, as we've already talked about, doesn't necessarily mean a lower ROI. In a lot of cases, my experience, proactive disruptive sources, lower conversion rate, I find that because the cost per lead, is much, much less, that my overall ROI, return on investment, ends up being higher. All right, so con number 2, more towards the beginning of the funnel. So we already talked about this as well. So longer time frame from lead to client to closing. Con number 3 is long-term follow-up plan must be dialed in. So a lot of these are building that pipe up for 6 to 12 months down the road. Where that reactive direct marketing approaches that we talked about, those can typically be 60, 90, 120 days out, right? So those are going to be a little bit quicker. So then number 3, again, we already talked about this, but you got to have your long-term follow-up plan dialed in, which for me, it's not a problem. I enjoy that. Easy for me to do. But that, again, just determines, do you want to have that long-term follow-up nurture, or do you like the more immediate now, whatever it may be. Number 4, learning curve to creating effective ads and funnels. Yes, you can go out there and outsource this stuff, but you're going to have more success if you learn how to do it yourself, right? It's just the reality of it. Your market, your avatar, your ideal client. If you take the time, and we're talking a couple days. Like it isn't as long as a lot of people think. It's not as complicated as a lot of people think. But it is a little bit of a learning curve. To go out there, versus Zillow doesn't cost. There's no learning curve to generating Zillow leads. I just got to stroke the check. Might be a learning curve to make sure I'm following up with those, with effective scripts and so forth. But again, this is with the assumption that you know how to follow up with leads, right? So again, both types can be great for different reasons. Now, for me personally, I like route number 2, proactive, disruptive marketing sources, right? Because again, I could scale up and down as fast as I want. I'm in control. A lot of it determines and dictates based on my skill set, how good of a marketer that I am, which I love marketing. So I invest the time, I take the learning curve, I have more freedom, I have more control. I can get a higher ROI on those sources. Yeah, a lot of these sources, again, are longer term nurture follow protocols, but then that's where I stack these, with more immediate sources, with prospecting based sources like open houses, or reaching out to lender leads and other things I've talked about in other podcasts, but I'll stack these with, we've got our, sphere of influence, past client plan, then we'll have 1 to 2 strategies for now immediate business that are more prospecting based, then we'll have, 1 to 2 proactive disruptive sources that are building that 6 to 12 month pipeline. Because guess what? Eventually that 6 to 12 month pipeline is built up. And as long as you keep consistent with this stuff, that pipeline then is always full. Just really getting through, that first 12 months, 6 to 12 months until that pipeline starts to fill up, you got to make sure that you have the runway to get through that. But again, those are the sources that I enjoy because again, I'm in full control. I can get a higher ROI. But if you're somebody that's like, okay, look, I don't like longer term nurture. I don't want to have to go through the learning curve. I don't want to look, there's nothing wrong with being honest with yourself and just saying, hey, that's not for me. That's not my style. So those are the different pros and cons. Again, they both can be highly effective. They can both, both different styles can deliver, insane, amazing ROIs, insane, amazing conversions. as long as you have the right strategy applied to them. That's what this all breaks down to, is what is your overall effective, strategy is just your effective plan. So what is your effective plan? And thinking about this, like really think this through from inception of that lead, when that lead comes through to the second they are a client. Now, hopefully you already know what you're going to do once they become a client. Yeah, right. Like hopefully everybody watching, listening to this has this dialed in. But a big mistake that I see most, whether it be prospecting or marketing though, is when it comes to lead generation, is they're not mapping this out and really paying attention to this from, again, lead inception till they become a client. Like what is that, best, most effective step-by-step process, throughout that whole entire, journey, from activity to lead to boom client. Like what does that look like? So here's what that strategy looks like for that activity. Get them to become a lead, because a lead is just, somebody that's opted in, exchange contact information for something of value, whatever that thing of value is that you're offering, right? That AKA that becomes a lead, right? So, got to have strategy for that. But then, okay, what's my step-by-step strategy from A to Z, from a lead coming in to becoming a client? Man, you have an effective strategy, effective, processes dialed in with those, you're going to convert at a high level, so then from there, okay, well, do you want to build out a reactive plan? And again, dude, like there are too many cases. I have too many, friends and coaching clients and people that I know that kick ass and crush it, in this business, that do both of these. I'm not saying that, they do both simultaneously, but, this person over here might just be focused on, Zillow style leads and just murdering it and killing it and crushing it. I mean, I know people that are doing 1,000+ deals a year just from those types of sources. And they've set up the infrastructure to go out there and murder and crush it with that. And then, vice versa on this. So, it really boils down to, okay, well, what style do you want to go after? What aligns best with your strengths and with how you want to do your business and how you want to grow and expand your business, what's important to you with your business. So again, my goal with this, breaking down this, is because, again, it's more complicated than just saying, oh, well, this is the best source. I could tell you that, hey, Facebook, best. Yeah, right. For paid, as far as paid leads, it's what I like the best, where I get the best overall ROI, but it doesn't mean it's going to be the best for you. There's more complexity that comes to that. So my goal with this is, though, to break these down so then you can decipher, which is the better path for you, and then you can start putting together that effective strategy and dialing your follow-up protocol for each. So anyway, I hope that you found this helpful. Again, if you have any questions or topics that you'd like me to do a deeper dive into here on this GSD mode real estate knowledge rounds, shoot me an email, joshua@gsdmode.com, or if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, drop a comment below. Make sure to also check out gsdmode.com for more free training and resources. Truly appreciate you guys being here. Hopefully this was helpful. Keep kicking ass, keep crushing. I will see you next time. Peace.